Hey guys, we're on day 7 of our persuasive writing. Really, this is kind of the last day of the writing before we wrap up our drafts. And last week we did 2 body paragraphs, one paragraph for our first reason why our ride is the best, then another body paragraph why our ride is the best. On Monday, we did our rebuttal paragraph where we went and argued against another point of view of another ride. Tuesday we did our introduction, and now Wednesday we are concluding. We're doing our 5th and final paragraph. Woohoo! So if we jump right into this, these are the steps. Once again, I've outlined kind of different options you have to put this together. So step 1, I said, choose a phrase to transition into your concluding thoughts. And so you're beginning your 5th and final paragraph. I put down some ways to end your essay, like how to jump into your concluding paragraph. Not only are you going to have to use this phrase and tell your reasons one more time, but you need to elaborate here and give several sentences, develop it. So one thing you could say is, I realized that, and I'll actually show that one as my example in a minute. So let's go ahead and just do that right now. I didn't actually do an example for each of these like I did for the introduction, because I felt like I was doing a lot of work for you and it was easy for you to kind of just go off of what I did. So I only chose one example of a conclusion. I started out with, I realized that. I used that phrase. So here's my example of my conclusion, how I started it. I realized that people have many options to choose from as they travel from park to park. With all these options, it's important to become familiar with the great parts of each ride. I think we all will admit that some rides are better than others. I strongly feel that the Frozen ride, Frozen Ever After, is the best Disney ride you can experience. So if you see here, I want to one more time say what my thesis is, what my opinion is, but I want to introduce the fact that, hey, this is important. Or, hey, I know you have a lot of options out there to choose for rides, and then you let the reader know that really your ride is the best, and you've talked about it throughout here. So that's a way to start the ending. That's transition. You could also say, as you can see, there are many reasons that you need to consider, blah, 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 and you get into it. As you can see is probably one of my most common phrases that I use at the end for my last paragraph to start out with. I realized that when and then whatever it is, when I talked about exciting roller coasters or exciting rides, I realized that not everybody loved those rides. Well, I feel that you need to give it a chance. You just kind of fill in your ideas here with that phrase. Other people should care about this issue, this choice in rides, because, or very similarly, this is important because. Now, I offered that as one of the options for an introduction we did from the last lesson. If you didn't use that, you might end the paragraph, your last paragraph, by saying, hey, this is an important decision because you don't want to be walking around the park looking for rides and choosing a ride that wasn't great and you had to wait a long time. So let the reader know by saying, hey, this is an important topic. You could say, well, my claim is true. Because it's true, isn't it also true that you need to, and then you tell them that. So those are the options. After that, your step 2 is to really think about your 2 reasons that you gave at the beginning of your introduction, and you're going to mention those one more time in your conclusion, but you don't want to repeat word for word the exact same 2 reasons. You want to say it in a different way, but still say the same thing. So as you talk about this, my original description of my 2 reasons here that I did from my introduction was, I believe that the Frozen ride, Frozen Ever After, is the best Disney ride because it has songs based around the Frozen soundtrack and part of the ride travels backwards. Those are the 2 reasons that I chose for this. Well, I want to reword this slightly, but say the same thing, say my 2 reasons. So I reworded my description here and said, as I've stated, This ride is awesome because it uses familiar songs to create an entertaining experience, and it creates excitement by traveling backwards at parts. So once again, I want you to understand that you don't want to just repeat your phrase. Up here, this is what I said in my introduction. If I repeat my two reasons word for word the same, it kind of makes it sound a little bit boring. It sounds repetitive. And so you want to say your two reasons again, but say it slightly different, but still remind them of the points that you made. You're wrapping things up. So after you do that, and I have restated this, the last step is just to say, hey, if you agree with me, please consider doing this. You want them to take action. You want them to do something about it. Hopefully you persuaded them. And if you convince them that your ride is the best, then what do you want them to do? They should be taking some action about it. So think of what you'd like the reader to do if you've persuaded them, and you could use some of these phrases you could choose from them. So if you agree with me after hearing my evidence, then you should do this. Or if I have convinced you after hearing my evidence, then, or finally, if you feel I might be right after hearing my evidence, then you might want to, and I have an example for that. Also, if you're curious to see if I'm right, then maybe try the ride. If I persuaded you after hearing my evidence, then, so you can see basically saying, well, if I did a good job, here's what I want you to do. So here's my example I did. If you feel that I may be right, next time you go to Disney, please consider running straight to the line of Frozen Ever After and seeing for yourself that it is the best Disney ride ever made. So you're basically telling them what you want them to do, okay? And so step 4 is just to put it all together. So all I did here, you can see my example is those different steps, okay? Really the 3 steps you could see above. I took those 3 parts and just put it together in my conclusion. So once again, I kind of introduced the fact that I'm wrapping things up. I restate my 2 main reasons in a different way. And then I tell them, hey, you should take this action. You should do this. You should go ride this ride. So you can see that your conclusion has quite a few sentences. A lot of people make it super short. I want you to use my examples, but make it your own. You decide how to do it. And this is your last writing day before we wrap things up and make a final draft. So enjoy, do awesome, and I'll see you tomorrow.